So white town only, right? And let me just say this: I don't have a problem with it, but I'm going to explain why I don't have a problem with it after I play the video.
No Jews, no gays. High up in the Ozark Hills in the state of Arkansas, dozens of people have been working hard, building houses and a new type of community. It's called Return to the Land, and it is a town open to white people only. They are millennials and Gen Z, and this is a new update of age-old prejudice.
What we've done here is establish a place where we have control over who our neighbors are, and that is just for the sake of preserving, our culture.
And that culture, effectively, we're saying this is a white culture, a whites-only place.
White American culture.
But what this sounds like is bringing back segregation. Is that a fair assessment?
It's free association. So we're not trying to keep other people down. This is a small settlement in the middle of the Ozarks.
But they are being kept out, even if...
Well, you don't let everyone into your home.
Around 40 people live here. Hundreds more from across the world have paid to be members. And while the men do the physical labour, the women take care of the children who live here full time. It can be a very loving community if you're part of the community, but if you're black, or if you're Jewish, or if you're gay, you can't be part of that community.
They can have their own communities, and they already do.
You might be wondering how any of this can be legal. Return to the Land is structured as a private members association, which they believe allows them to discriminate on the basis of ethnicity, along with other factors. That has yet to be tested in the courts and may well fail. The Arkansas Attorney General has said his office is now reviewing the matter as a result of our reporting, and that there is no room for racial discrimination in Arkansas or anywhere in a free society.
That's not going to stand. That used to be the old-time way of maintaining segregated communities that went on all through the mid-'60s and got wiped out. The other thing is, as a matter of fact, I'm familiar with that area. There used to be a Boy Scout camp, and over the 15 years I was a Cub and Boy Scout master in the Memphis area, we'd take boys down there for a week. And candidly, the staff of the camp would say, be careful of your boys, they're black. So a lot of people that live around here have a very serious problem with that. So keep track of them, because we have had some incidents. And that would be like in 1982, 83, somewhere thereabouts, 84, 85. And that was a reality. So I can see this continuing because I recognize some of the topography there, including that tree line, and been there. But that's not going to be allowed to stand. You can't have, it's a covenant. And the U.S. Supreme Court said you can't have restricted covenants based on race or ethnicity. Flat out. Hands down, no how, no way. Probably nobody's told them.
Well, I thought I had saved something here. Oh, this. So here's my thing of, I don't care. As long as you're not violating anybody else's civil rights, equal opportunities, or, violently attacking other groups or anyone, for that matter, because there are black people who are doing the same thing, or black people who are saying we want our own land, or we want our own black state or a black city, as part of reparations. It somewhat would be the same thing. But if people do practice it, but they don't practice it in the name of white only. However, when you look at certain communities, let's just take the Jewish community in Brooklyn, right? In that community, there's nothing but a whole Jewish community, nobody from the outside. Now they own the building, so that means they get to say who can move in and stuff like that. So
they can't do that if it's a discrimination based on ethnicity, amongst other things.
But if it's religion, because I said Jewish,
They can't even do it based on religion.
why do we have, and maybe we should just save this question to after I play this video, but why do we have these large Jewish communities, these large Muslim communities? We have communities where it's predominantly nothing but that group of people.
Because other people feel estranged from the general flavor of the neighborhood and don't want to be there. And nobody does anything about it, even though they could. See, the way this stuff got...
Let me just also throw it, because somebody reminded me in the chat, even the Amish community, only the Amish lives in that, on that particular land that they occupy. Maybe they own it, but yeah.
But see, in the Amish situation, there are other factors that sort of dictate who wants to live there. The way this stuff came to a head, you have to understand that you had a choice of living in the hood, no matter how much money you made. And somebody next door to you had as a boyfriend a legitimate pimp. And she was one of his, well, she might have been his bottom hoe. And somebody across the street from you made a career of being a burglar. And somebody 2 doors down was a big time drug dealer. So you either stayed there with them and hope they didn't do something to you, or you had to move elsewhere. And when elsewhere had these restrictive covenants, see, there was nowhere for you to go or any options for you to exercise. That's how this stuff had the impetus to move along very quickly. It's just like you either stay in a place that's way below your income and educational level, or you are not to be restricted from moving out if it's your choice, because there's nowhere else to move to that they'll let you stay.
So I'm going to play this clip here.
You hear that? That is the sound of freedom.
Feels really amazing. I cry every time I come here.
Why were these two women interested in the prospect of buying a town in the first place?
We needed to create a space and a place where we could be a village again, a tribe again.
So Renee and Ashley reached out to family and friends, and together they bought what they intend to name Freedom, Georgia, a new black city. The owners hosted the big black campout over Labor Day weekend. Supporters drove in from across the country.
That is our vision, and to be able to pass this land down to my children and to the children that are represented by each of our 19 families as a piece of legacy. We're hoping to create legacy.
You hear that?
So
okay, the only way they could...
Well, let me just say this 2 things. I would say it's the same as the white town, but it's slightly different. But go ahead.
The only way they could get away with this is declare the thing a condominium and everybody is a co-owner of the same property. So the initial group that got in would be able to pass, perhaps with the right kind of lease agreement or residential agreement, the entirety of their interest down to relatives. But it would break down quickly if somebody with one of those interests sold that interest to somebody who was outside of the favored ethnic group. And the same thing would apply to them as to this town down in the Ozarks.
So here's the thing why I say it's the same, but it's different, because you are creating a community of likeness. But the difference
makes no difference.
But the difference is where I'm seeing it is the white town only. They are saying we don't want anyone from the outside coming in trying to, rent an apartment, buy a home if they're building homes on that particular land. To whereas this particular, with the black families buying land and creating a town, they're not saying that they're going to prohibit anyone outside of black being allowed to come in. They're not going to. Whereas the other white town, what they're trying to establish their white town, they want to prohibit other people other than white for coming in.
No, see, they could get away with it for a short while, if they all went in as co-purchasers of properties that could be used as a residential property. So only that group of people bought into what would be a condominium. The problem would come in if anybody sold his or her interest in the condominium to anybody else because of economic hardship, opportunity, moving to another location, whatever. They could not discriminate against the purchasers based on ethnic considerations. So that would quickly break that up. I understand what they're doing, it just won't work.
For who? For the white town?
For the black group. In other words, you know what a condominium is? In other words, everybody that lives in that building is a co and equal owner of a equal share of the property rights. Now, if one group of, say, 100 people said, let's all buy 40 acres of land and come up with a 100-person condominium, well, they could go in and buy it. That's just one purchase. But if any one of the people entitled to property rights in that condominium decides to sell their interest, then they cannot impose an ethnic condition. The original group can do whatever they want to determine who's in that original group to acquire the property interest. But if any one person is a tenant in common, sells their property interest to anybody else, they cannot discriminate on who they sell it to.
Well, the black, you're talking about the white town, because the black people.
No, I'm talking about the black folk.
Yeah, but they weren't doing that. They weren't doing that.
That's what they effectively were doing. They were all going in as a group and buying this property. Mm-hmm. And they would all be equal owners of the property. No problem. They're what they call tenants in common. Now, if one of the tenants in common sells his interest to anybody else, that sale cannot have as a predicate anything to do with ethnicity. This is how there was so much loss.
Let me stop. Meaning that if I sell my condo or my piece of land,
not your condo. Your interest.
If I sell my interest, I could sell it to anyone other than black.
No, you can sell it to black, but you can't make the requirement be black.
Okay, which is what people do now. They do that now.
Yeah. In other words, 100 people buy a property. They're all tenants in common to the property. They can do that. 100, anybody can contract together to do whatever they want. But if one person out of the 100, leaving 99 others, decides to sell their interest, they cannot use ethnicity as a basis for the sale to another party. So in other words, it would work.
Right. So you cannot do it on paper, even though people do it. They don't do that on paper because it's illegal, but they do it to where they personally would sell it to someone that's black, as opposed to someone that is white or other.
No,
they won't give the reason of ethnicity. That's not the reason why they was selling it to this person.
But it's like this: 40 acres of land are put up for sale. If 100 people said, let's go buy that 40 acres and we can all live there, they can do whatever they want to on the front end to acquire the joint property interest. But if anybody sells their share of the property interest, they cannot discriminate based on ethnicity. Now, as a practical matter, a version of that is why there was such a great loss in air property in the South. Great-grandmama or great-great-granddaddy had this farm. He might have acquired 60 acres. So when he dies, it passes on, and then what winds up happening is you've got cousins and aunts, so you've got 110 people with an interest in this, say, 60 to 80 or 100 acres of land. Well, somebody decided to move away. He doesn't like the family anyway, but he's got an interest in this property because he inherited it. He lives in Detroit, and he's a little down and out because he lost his job when the automotive plant, say Ford or Chrysler he works for, or American Motors, downsized or went out of business, so he needs cash. So he's contacted by developers just like, do you own the property on so and so? Are you interested in selling your property? He gets contacted and he says, yeah, sure, I need the money. So he sells it to somebody, a developer, and the developer now has an undivided percentage of that property. If the heir who had 7% sold him his 7%, now this big time multi-million-dollar developer has the same 7% interest in this property, with granddad, grandmom, who inherited from great, and all of these people are now mixed in with others who want to develop the property, and they can go into court and mandate that their interests are protected by developing the property, and they can commit themselves to stuff that the other people can't afford to buy in, so they buy them out. Now they own the property. And in 1976, the property you may had 28% of the county was owned by black folk. Now it drops down to 3 and 4% because of this kind of thing.